2 p.m. We'll get started. Good afternoon. Today's date is July 19, 2019, and the time is 2 p.m. This is a time and place for Del Norte County administrative hearings conducted by a hearing officer. I'm Robert Russell, attorney at law, and I have been duly appointed to act as the hearing officer for these proceedings. These proceedings are recorded, so all statements must be made from the podium in front of me. When your case is called, please come to the podium. I will ask you to state your name and spell it. Please speak loudly and clearly. The county will present its case first. If there is a hearing, that is, you will then be given the opportunity to present evidence and question the code enforcement officer. If you desire, you will first be sworn in. Please make sure that all cell phones, pagers, or other devices are turned off or set to silence. If you need to make a call, please step into the corridor so as not to disturb these proceedings. And I will now swear in the code enforcement officer, Dominic Mello, which will be good for all the proceedings. You raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in these matters now pending at these hearings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may have a seat. I think we're going to have a couple hearings today, so let's go through the ones where there are status reviews and these people can leave early. Regarding 371-391 Darby Street, Dennis Sutton. Sir, would you please step to the podium? Officer Mello, can you give me a quick update on this case, please?
Yes, been in regular contact with Mr. Sutton over the course of the last month or so, and he's actually got one of the modulars moved over to its pad where it belongs. So that was good progress, and then he also has his permit applications and stuff mailed off to HCD. Last time we spoke, he hadn't received them back, so maybe hopefully he has some good news.
I didn't get them yet today. But when I talked to them, before I sent them in, they said there was a problem and called me. They haven't called me, so it should be in their work. As soon as I get it, we'll get on it.
So you're moving along on the matters you promised you'd work on. Is a 30-day review sufficient, or do you need more time?
I think 30 is sufficient until he gets the permits in hand, and then we can give him extended time to...
60, and then we can get something done. As soon as I get the permits.
I'm open to that.
I think 60 would be appropriate. That'll be the order. We'll continue this matter for a status review progress hearing to September 20, 2019 at 2 p.m. this location. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Let's see here. Regarding 5025 Wonder Stump Road, Scott DeVore. Sir, could you step forward to the podium, please? I see that public nuisance order was issued after a hearing on 1/18/2019. There was 30 days to abate the issues, nuisance issues. And we've had some status reviews, and we're set for a status review today. Officer Mello, can you give me an update?
Just last time I worked with Mr. DeVore, it sounded like he was considering listing the property for sale. I'm assuming that's still the circumstance. Otherwise, I'd went by there and there was a little bit of progress made. Still obviously a lot of work to do, but kind of like to hear what Mr. DeVore has to say with where he's going to move forward with on this.
Your name is Scott DeVore?
Yes, sir, Scott DeVore.
Okay.
What I got going on is I spoke with Jim at Stromberg Realty. We had agreed on $125,000 quick sale on the property. He has, as yet, has not gotten back to me with the paperwork signed. We went ahead and listed it on the internet on Zillow so that we get as much exposure until he signs the papers on it. I got rid of another car yesterday. I'm getting rid of the Peterbilt, one of the pieces of equipment. Hopefully on Monday or Tuesday, it will be gone. I'm just trying to get rid of it as we go and clean up is what we've done. We've got about another ton of trash taken out. It's slow moving. I just wanted to bring to your attention, I was in the hospital and diagnosed with cardiac heart failure with, and I'm on an sudden attack vest.
Okay.
So my efforts are really limited. My wife's been doing a lot of the work. But we do plan on getting this thing sold, cleaned up, and getting this thing behind us. We just gotta get her done.
How long do you think it'll, at the rate you're going, how long do you think it's gonna take you?
Well, we had
Assuming it's not sold.
Well, we had one offer for $60,000 week before last, and we can't walk at that. I thought 125 was a fair price for the property, being that the county values it at 160. So, can we go for another 30, or 30's out, and keep in touch with you? And I'm just going to keep trying to eliminate stuff as I can go.
What, how much time do you think
I
is appropriate?
was gonna recommend 60 days.
Okay, that'd be great too. However it works.
All right, well, I think that's appropriate under the circumstances. I'm glad to see you're doing some work, and sorry about your medical issue. But as you understand, these matters must be taken care of.
Absolutely.
So we'll continue this to September 20, 2019 at 2 p.m. at this location here. Okay, thanks for coming, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your patience.
We have see 1190 Burchell Street, Byron and Susan Pressler. Anybody here on 1190 Burchell Street regarding progress on the status on the order to abate? No answers. Could you give me an update where we are, Officer Mello, 1190 Burchell Street?
Yes, I haven't heard back from the property owner. And complainants in that area have said things quieted down quite a bit over there, but the two shanty structures with all the junk and debris around them remain. I'd like to have another opportunity to try to track down that property owner and see where he's at with complying with the order to abate.
Okay, I see that the order was issued on April 19, 2019, the 60-day, with 60 days to abate, so still fairly close with that parameters. How much time would you think is appropriate?
Another 30 days.
All right, I think that's appropriate. The order will be to continue this matter for a status review on August 16, 2019, 2 p.m. That will be the order. We have the matter 6661 Lake Earl Drive, a Peter Sterling, AKA Hartley, I believe. And anyone here regarding the property at 6661 Lake Earl Drive? No response. Can you give me an update where we are on this property, sir?
Yes, the property owner is a difficult man to track down sometimes, and so I've been struggling to get a hold of him for an update. Last I heard, they did have the plumbing disconnected from that awful structure. We're just looking forward to get the power disconnected and have it dismantled. If I could probably give one more opportunity so I can track him down and then do an inspection on site and see where they're at.
I think we need to make some decisions on this because we are now, tomorrow, or a day or two, will be a year since the order was issued to abate, and there's been numerous status hearings, and I think Mr. Sterling, aka Hartley, appeared maybe once or twice out of all of those. I know he's He's not well, so there may be some medical issues and other things going on. So let's, the next review, let's take a look to see what we need to do to get this thing resolved and off the calendar.
Yes, I'm definitely in agreement with that.
Do you need 30 or 60 days?
30 days will be sufficient.
All right, this matter will be continued for status review to August 16, 2019 at 2 p.m. Let's see here. We have the matter of 43 Weber Drive, Klamath area, Andrew Sutherland. Is an Andrew Sutherland here or anybody here regarding the property 43 Weber Drive, Klamath? There is no response. I see that on March 15, 2019, after a public nuisance hearing, there was an order issued that there was a public nuisance on the property with an order to abate. Can you give me a status of where we are on this, Officer Miller?
Yeah, so the property was in escrow, and that escrow, the title company that was handling that would not do the title insurance for that sale. So the prospective buyers had to transfer down to a different title company in Southern California that's apparently willing to insure that property for the title sale. So we're starting that process over. So hopefully in about another 30 days, escrow should be closed and the new owners will take possession, and they have the means and the ability to abate the nuisance conditions there.
And I suspect through escrow, the nuisance matters will be resolved. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident the potential owners here, the new owners, will address matters. They've purchased other properties in that neighborhood and have been successful with remediating them.
All right, you're asking how many days? 30?
30, please.
Okay, this matter will be continued for a status review to August 16, 2019 at 2 p.m. And next matter, 1199 Kellogg Road, property owner Haley Sutherland. Is anyone present, Haley Sutherland, or anyone here regarding 1199 Kellogg Road? There's no response. Officer Mello, can you give me a update? Let me see here. I see that on April 19, 2019, we had a hearing on a public nuisance, and there was order to issue that there was a public nuisance in order to abate 60 days to abate the matters. Can you give me an update where we are?
Yeah, I believe the property owner's in jail. I've been by the property a few times, and there's still a substantial amount of work that needs to be conducted there to bring it into compliance, but she also has made a great deal of progress since this nuisance case was heard. The illegal occupancy of the trailer is still taking place. Actually, that's been landscaped quite a bit around that trailer, relatively clean compared to the rest of the property. I haven't had any more recent complaints about the smell of raw sewage coming from that location.
Do you know how long her sentence is?
No, I don't. Doesn't indicate that on the jail's website.
All right. What do you recommend?
I'd request another 30-day extension and try to work with the property owner further if she gets out.
All right. Maybe during that time you can see how long she's going to be in. If she's going to be in for a year or longer.
Yes,
We
I'll
maybe need to do something else rather than wait for her to
I agree.
get out. I suspect I don't know if we want to go through the hassle of getting an order from jail to get her here. Let's try to avoid that, but So you're recommending 30 days?
Yeah, 30 days, and I'll follow up on that, get that information.
Okay. This matter will be continued to August 16, 2019 at 2 p.m. Status review. And I think we're got all those matters that are set for status reviews. So the next set for a hearing regarding 430 Darby Street, a David and Ruby Smith. I believe Attorney Michael Reese is here for the Smiths, and Joel Campbell for County Counsel. Attorney? Good afternoon. If you'd like to take a corner seat there, or have your client sit with you there, or the front seat, that's fine with me.
If you want to make a record, though, you want to be on the mic.
Are we going to a hearing, or do we have some?
Unless something's changed since the last time we spoke 45 minutes ago, I think we're going to a hearing.
Okay.
We're at sort of loggerheads on whether or not this constitutes a nuisance or not. I know that Mr. Mello started this case, 2016, but the current condition of it, I'm not seeing where in the code it would be a nuisance. So I think we're just going to have to hear the evidence.
All right. Well, that's why we're here. And we can do that.
I believe you were just passed a copy of Mr. Mello's staff report with accompanying exhibits.
I have a whole package here of exhibits marked 1 through, let's see, 16, maybe more. Looks like more.
And then
Anyway, do you want these exhibits back?
No.
All right.
you're introducing that in evidence.
Yes, I would like to introduce this into evidence.
And I know that the rules of evidence are slightly relaxed at the hearing, but given there are multiple references to basically a confidential or anonymous calls about a blight or a nuisance, that there's no way for me to cross-examine those in that regard. I'm going to object to that coming into evidence. I think Mr. Mello can testify as to what he saw at the property in question in his contact with the Smiths, and maybe to identify some of the witnesses over a hearsay objection, but I don't think they can get in where there's no way I can ferret out who the complaining witnesses are.
Okay, here's the process we'll take. Mr. Campbell will start for the county position first, and then Mr. Reese, you're entitled to ask questions of the witness or witnesses, or examine the evidence submitted, and before I admit the evidence. And when the county's through, you're entitled to cross-examine, and when you're through with that, you can put on a case if you so desire. And when both sides have completed, I will give you time for a short amount of time for argument if you so desire. And so that's the process I will take. I have already sworn Code Enforcement Officer Dominic Mello in for the whole proceedings here, so we have a record of that. And anything else preliminarily you want to discuss?
One thing I'd like to bring up is that Mr. Mello did go out to the property this morning to take pictures. I realize that is very short notice as far as giving evidence and discovery to the other side. It's my intention to not introduce that evidence except on rebuttal if there's a claim that the property has somehow substantially changed from the documents in evidence. If Mr. Reese wants to introduce them, I will not, of course, object to that. In my opinion, all they show is that the property is substantially the same, so I don't think it's particularly important. As far as the case itself, I think it's simple and I won't belabor it. This case started in June of 2016, and as is the custom of our county code enforcement, it was largely about compliance and not punishment. He was given many, many opportunities, as you can see from the first few pages of the staff report, the major events in the case, regular contact, regular opportunities to comply. In November of 16, I believe this was back in Dave Mason's time, the property owner was advised to put up a temporary construction fence to hide the vehicles until he could do something with the vehicles. 2.5 years later, the temporary construction fence is still there and the vehicles are still behind it. There isn't really a lot of facts to dispute. It's largely an issue of whether or not what's there constitutes a nuisance. Under the county code, blight is a nuisance, visual blight, and this is a community standard. It's, I agree, a subjective standard, but it is sufficiently objective to have been upheld in the courts numerous times. The community has complained about this house. This is something that bothers the neighbors, this fence and the cars behind it. I think that is quite clearly bothering the community and lowering the standard. But more objectively, we have a county code that does not allow for junkyards in residential properties. Junkyard being defined as 200 square feet of scrap metal or inoperable vehicles. These vehicles are on the property, have been on the property. Whether or not they operate, strictly speaking, I don't think is the point. It's whether or not they're sitting there rusting, being moved regularly, whether they're contributing to an overall appearance of a neglected neighborhood, which is what the neighbors are complaining about. In regards to the fence, the county code does not permit a fence over 4 feet tall in a front yard. If you look at Exhibit 13 of the report, you can see by reference to other objects, there's not a tape measure in there, but you can see that this fence is quite a bit taller than 4 feet. I would specifically point to page 4 in Exhibit 13, and you can see that it is as tall as the Jeep. I think it's a matter of common sense and common knowledge that this fence is over 4 feet tall. What the fence is hiding is all the vehicles. And so while we think the fence is blight and should be moved, it's unsightly. There have been occasions, as you can see in the history in the first few pages, that the tarp fence has been damaged and in need of repair. You can see through it. You can see the shadows of cars through it. It's really not hiding anything. The fence itself is blight, and if it were removed, it would reveal even more blight. What the county wants is for the whole yard to be cleaned up, for the junk and the vehicles to be removed. What the fence is hiding, I believe, is a bunch of cars that are not properly registered, which is also against the county code. I think code enforcement is willing and able to help remove the cars, to help tow them, to help clean up and spend a little bit of the county's money to do so if the property owner is willing. This has gone on for 3 years with very little progress. This hearing itself has been continued since April with very little outreach from the property owner or attempts to come to any kind of agreement on our helping them fix it. It is the county's request that it be declared a nuisance, that an order to abate be issued so that we can get into the formal process with the anticipation that those costs now, after having not been voluntarily accepted the county's help, that now costs could be recovered against the property. And that is the case. If there are any questions, I can answer them.
All right, well, what I plan to do is go over each exhibit here, and I have questions I will ask. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Exhibit 1A, referred to as a staff report. It's approximately 5 pages, dated 4/19/29, I'm sorry. Review date of 4/18/2019. Appears to be reviewed by Heidi Kunstall, the community, Director of Community Development, and prepared by Officer Mello. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And the discussion and summary seems to set out the case for the county on at least a history showing 8/9/2016 through perhaps currently as the history of the property, as you indicated, this would state of complaints. And particularly we talked about the fence, the inoperable vehicles inside. Appears to be some at times from outside the fence. And vehicles in plural, although not an exact number. There are perhaps the photographs will give me more of an indication of that. There seems to be an issue of visibility from the intersection because of vehicles and or the fence, which certainly would be an issue. 1A will be admitted into evidence. Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, the same statements I made earlier. It's accumulation of basically opinions and complainants of which I can't identify and or cross-examine. So it's multiple levels of hearsay. I think it would be much more prudent for a record that in case this ends up in the Superior Court to have sworn testimony through today's hearing as opposed to just introducing a staff report from 2 years ago.
What, before I rule on your objection, what I normally do is ask Officer Mello his personal knowledge as to his view of the property, and perhaps you'd like to inquire of him his conduct regarding his investigative efforts and his observations as to the property in question, 430 Darby Street.
And one of the points I would interject, Your Honor, it's fairly obvious, like on page 3 of 5, you've got these references. I was contacted by a complainant reported. I was on 5/22 of 18. I received a call from one of the complaints requesting a case update. That's on 7/12. I received a call from a complainant on 8/24 that doesn't leave any room or any clue on who's the complainant, what motive they may have to make continual complaints, and so it's multiple levels of anonymous hearsay.
It's only hearsay if it's offered to prove the matter asserted in that hearsay. What this is a list of events in the case log. The fact that a complaint came in is all that's really necessary for that the truth of what the complainant says is not. That's why code enforcement officer goes out and investigates and talks to the property owner and takes the pictures. I think the hearsay objection is very misplaced.
All right, as to the hearsay objection, as a hearing officer, I'm entitled to have entered a certain amount of hearsay in these proceedings. For example, if a reasonable person would rely on it, if it's, for example, supplemental and/or explains elements, and/or if it's relevant, and it must be relevant and particularly not repetitious. So I will rule on that hearsay after I hear Mr. Mel's observations of the property at 430 Darby.
Yeah, since we started receiving the complaints, approximately around 2016, I've made several visits to the property, and property has a large accumulation of dilapidated vehicles on it.
When you say a large, can we estimate?
Approximately around
Less
8,
than 10 or more than 10?
at least 8. Definitely have counted 6 on one side of the property, and then another 3 or 4 on the Darby side of the property. And images of Google Earth over a period of time, consistently document them vehicles in that place parked on the yard and whatnot. Accumulation of vehicle parts come and go, axles, engines, and whatnot. Vehicles at that location, some of them are filled with some junk and debris. Look like they've been there for quite a long time, with the sun fading the dye on the cardboard boxes and stuff. The vehicles are rusting. Vegetation grows up around them, so it doesn't look like they move at all. And then the tarp fence, initially, as a temporary fence, I thought that was perfectly reasonable why he did something. Mr. Smith mentioned he wanted to build a shop to store the vehicles in. So the fabric fence would be reasonable, during a short time period to conduct that construction. But it's remained long-term, and being that it's like a tarp of fabric, the sun, the wind, the rain tears it apart, and it becomes dilapidated itself and gets tore down, and then exposes them vehicles to public view further than what they are, behind the tarp. Just the totality of the circumstances, that property is pretty blighted, and large accumulation of what I would consider junk.
All right. Is this a corner lot, or is it middle of a lot?
It's corner lot, corner Hodge and Darby.
All right. And have you from time to time talked to property owner, and if so, who?
Mr. Smith, I've spoken with him in the past.
All right. Did he give you any explanation for the accumulation of vehicles you mentioned?
Initially, Mr. Smith would come in and talk to me at the counter in our office. I think he mentioned some of them might have been his son, who was serving in the armed forces, and the other ones were his. Then he went on to discuss hardships, financial and whatnot, with his desires to properly store them vehicles.
This Exhibit 1A seems to talk about a history without saying what any person told you. How many, lack of a better word, complaints have you received on this parcel?
Best of my recollection, there's 4 complainants from that neighborhood that have taken issue with the property, and at least 2 or 3 of them have repeatedly complained over the years, written complaints to the county with the photographs attached.
All right. And did one individual complain more than once over the year?
Like I said, 2 or 3 of the complainants have complained repeatedly. Maybe one of them has only complained once.
Right. And when these people complain, do they do this in writing, or is it all or a combination?
It's a combination. We've received a lot of written complaints, and I've also received a lot of telephone calls.
Is there a process you use to protect the identity of complainants?
Yes, per administration, we are not allowed to disclose our complainants. Obviously, complainants could receive counter attacks, you know, vandalism, threats of violence and whatnot, if their neighbors know who the complainants are.
Do you, from time to time, give them the opportunity, though, to come to court and testify for them?
Absolutely, complainants are always advised that we have public comment periods in the hearings.
From your personal observations alone, not regarding information from any complainants, in your experience as a code enforcement officer, do you feel that this accumulation of vehicles is a violation of one or more codes, county codes?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, we also have, it comes to my attention, a member of the neighborhood who might be willing to speak on the issue.
She's a complainant? Is it?
I don't know if she's a complainant.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Does she plan to testify?
I wasn't going to call her as a witness or anything, but I would encourage the hearing officer to hear what she has to say. My ruling is this, that I will allow 1A into evidence, with the exception that, as it is verified by Officer Mello's statements, and the complainant information will be used for supplemental information, and as it explains the fact that of the alleged nuisance, public nuisance. So 1A is admitted into evidence. Exhibit 1 is a grant deed, appears to be a certified copy. Is that correct, Officer Miller?
Yes, it is.
And it deed grants to David A. Smith and Ruby L. Smith, husband and wife, as joint tenants, the legal description thereof. And did you retrieve this document from the county?
Yes.
1 will be admitted into evidence. 2 appears to be a letter dated 8/9/2016 regarding property at 430 Darby Street, Crescent City. It is written by Dominic Mello. Officer Mello, could you specifically, in a summary form, tell us what the purpose of this exhibit is?
It's a letter that code enforcement customarily sends out to property owners when we receive complaints about conditions at their property. It's more of a courtesy notice, just outlining the different violations observed at the property or reported. And we mail this out in an effort to make property owners aware, and then hopefully they will bring the property in compliance on their own.
And specifically, was the nuisance issues addressed in this?
By the property owner or just the
By
nuisances?
you in the letter?
Yes, we've outlined some nuisance conditions in the letter.
2 will be admitted into evidence. 3 appears to be a letter dated 9/30/16 regarding a second notice of code violation at 430 Darby Street. It is from Dominic Mello, Code Enforcement Officer. Sir, can you tell us the purpose of this letter?
This, if we don't gain compliance with the first letter we mail out, we'll typically send out a letter with verbiage, which is contained in this one, just discussing possible civil penalties and fines and whatnot the property owner could be subjected to if they fail to comply with county code. Once again, it's still tailored towards voluntary compliance.
Does this address the what's referred to as inoperative vehicles?
Yes.
3 will be admitted into evidence. 4 is a letter to David or Ruby Smith at 430 Darby. From Dominic Mello. And dated 10/6/16. Sir, can you explain the
Mr. Smith had came in the office and after receiving the second mailed notice and spoke with me about his hardships and what was taking place at the property and a little bit of the history in the neighborhood, how he felt his neighbors were harassing him. I took them concerns back to my supervisor and discussed them with her and mailed this letter out. It was just kind of a conclusion of our considerations of his hardships, but ultimately the nuisance conditions at the property and our desire to continue to try to correct them.
will be admitted. 5 is another letter dated October 10, 2016. It appears to be a letter from David and Ruby Smith. This is Exhibit 5. Did you receive this letter?
Yes, I did.
And did you read its contents?
Yes.
And basically, in your opinion, as a code enforcement officer, what did you retrieve from this letter?
It was I took it as a response to the last mail notice, basically just Mr. Smith outlining his disagreement with our findings and then requesting some time extensions to complete his projects to take care of the vehicles.
With time extensions granted?
Nothing was discussed further with Mr. Smith, I don't believe, after receiving that, but code enforcement typically and historically works with property owners, so I would say yes, there was time extensions granted.
All right. That Exhibit 5 is omitted. 6 appears to be 2, 4, 6 photographs on 3, 8.5, and 11 pages. Shows the fence, fabric fence, and all of the pictures, vehicles. It shows an RV or a mobile home, and inside the fabric fence with vehicles on the outside. Did you take these photographs, sir?
Yes, I did.
And when did you recall when you took these?
Around November 9th, 2016.
All right. And you said you've been to the property since then, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
And is it still in a similar situation as these photographs depict?
There's the accumulation of stuff has increased since these photographs were taken, and further tarp fencing has been put up.
Exhibit 6 will be admitted in the evidence. 7 is a let's see, it's a letter dated 12/1/2016 from Dominic Mello to David or Ruby Smith. It appears to have a map attached to it. Can you explain what this is about, sir?
So after the installment of the tarp fence, Code enforcement was looking at the whole matter from a singular code perspective of the inoperative vehicles, and also with a desire to work with Mr. Smith and allow him to build his shop or do whatever he's going to do with the vehicles long-term. Mailed him a letter advising the compliance with that particular county code as, the installment of his fence. The neighbors had been complaining about visibility issues there in that intersection, and so I included the map diagram from the county's engineering office, which lays out the measurements and distances and stuff for corner lot setbacks to ensure that he would have the visibility requirements met. And I was hoping Mr. Smith would take that and ensure his fence and his cars and whatever else he keeps in the yard area there on that intersection would be in compliance, so he wouldn't have any future problems.
Specifically as to this letter, did you get any response from
No, I did not.
the property owners?
No.
7 will be admitted into evidence. Exhibit 8 is it's a letter from Dominic Mello to David Smith for 30 Darby, date 1/20/2017. Sir, can you explain what this is about?
Code enforcement received further complaints, which initiated the case to be brought forth on the priorities of handling, and mailed out another notice. Excuse me, I might be incorrect on that. That was the compliance letter, Exhibit 8.
Yes. All right. 8 will be admitted into evidence. 9 is a letter from Dominic Mello to David and Ruby Smith for 30 Darby regarding 430 Darby on 3/15/2017. Sir, what's the purpose of this letter?
This was to notify Mr. Smith that would receive further complaints, and then I outlined the code section under the nuisance code, which would consider his fence blight and substandard. So I was trying to give Mr. Smith a heads up here that his tarp fence was not going to be a long-term solution, but a temporary solution, and eventually it was going to come to a head. I also understand Mr. Smith's conundrum there, because removing the fence would further expose him to additional violations, but then also leaving the fence up was eventually going to be problematic as well.
9 is entered into evidence. Exhibit 10 is 6 pages of photographs. There's 4 photographs on each page. First page again shows the fabric fence in a condition of, I guess, disrepair. You can see at least 2 vehicles inside the fence area. First page. The second page, you can see at least 3 vehicles inside the disrepaired fabric fence. Third page is shows some vehicles outside of the fence area, and again the disrepaired fence. Next page shows 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vehicles are outside of the fence in one photograph, and different views of those. The next page again shows the fabric fence with vehicles in disrepair of the fence. And same with the following photograph. Did you take these photographs, sir?
Yes, I did.
And do you remember about what time these were taken?
Approximately late May 2018.
And since you observed the property within the last how many days?
I observed it this morning.
And is it similar to those photographs in 10 or dissimilar?
tarp fence has been replaced with a new one, otherwise the accumulation of vehicles and whatnot is consistent.
All right. 10 will be under subsections admitted into evidence. 11 appears to be return receipt requested, several pages following Exhibit 11. Sir, can you tell us what this is all about?
This is the county's formal enforcement document, which would be the notice of nuisance, and then attached to it's the certified mailing receipts. After failed compliance by Mr. Smith and no response to the mail notices, I went ahead and issued the notice of nuisance, order to abate, outlined the different county code violations which I observed and documented in the photographs.
As Exhibit 11, is this notice of nuisance and order to abate the requirements, in your opinion, under the county code?
Yes.
11 shall be admitted into evidence. 12 appears to be a certified mail receipt, 2-page with a notice to abate nuisance and notice to appear. Can you explain what this is, please?
After some time had passed, Mr. Smith never contacted me about the issue notice of nuisance. So it proceeded to issue a notice to appear for a nuisance hearing. And once again, it was mailed out, certified mail. As you can see on the photographed envelope, it was the certified component of that. I mail first class and certified mail together, and the certified component was refused, not picked up.
12 will be admitted into evidence. Exhibit 13, with its subsections, at least 10 pages, appears to be photographs of the fabric fence. Appears to be a Suzuki Jeep on the outside of the fabric fence. Shows an intersection in fabric fence, appears to be in repair. Photograph shows at least 2 vehicles outside that fence. When were these photographs taken, sir?
Approximately April 17th, 2019, in preparation for the nuisance hearing that was scheduled that month.
These photographs will be admitted into evidence. 14 appears to be a aerial photograph. Can you, it's labeled 430 Darby, imagery per Google Earth taken 7/20/15. Did you have this prepared?
Yes, I accessed the Google Earth and pulled up this image, and then the image date indicated it was from 7/20/15. It was just to show the amount of Mr. Smith's property that's consumed with vehicles.
And at that time, there's no fence around that.
That's correct.
And can you, from this photograph, can you count how many vehicles are on what appears to be his property?
I see approximately 13 or 14 vehicles on there.
All right. And is his property the upper left-hand corner area, just below the street?
Yes.
And what is the street names intersection where this property is located?
Hodge and Darby.
And is this property in the county area of Del Norte County?
Yes, it is.
14 will be admitted into evidence. All right. 15.
Your Honor, did I hear the time right, that this was a 2015 photo?
Yes, sir.
As to its relevance as a time, since we're in 2019, I would say it's not relevant. I would subject to its consideration by the court.
I
Especially since
will-
you have to take it from space to determine how many vehicles existed nearly 4 years ago.
I will allow it to show a history on the property. I would agree with you, if there was no history here, it would more than likely be excluded, but since we're talking about a history,
I thought I heard that this case originated in 2016, that he started it from a complaint, and so 2015.
yeah, I think you're right, Mr. Reese. Could you clarify some of this information for us, Officer? No?
So yes, 2016 would be the origin of the case. I included this picture from 2015 to show that some of the vehicles that are on the property now were on the property in 2015, so that the duration and longevity that these vehicles are sitting there unchanged, unimpaired, no use outside of just storing them. And you can tell if you look at the red colored Connex box to the left side of the house there, then there's the green vehicle parked next to it. You can see that green vehicle still there in the photographs that we've recently taken. So I think the Google Earth image is important to show the conduct and behavior taking place at this property with the hoarding of vehicles.
And again, it's so aged, it's pre-complainant, and the court can tell from the recent photographs that the green car is not facing in the same direction, and all the cars that are on the left, or what appears to be stuff, because I can only ascertain 4 cars for certain on the left, some of them have been moved to the right, but it's just as evidence, it's nearly 5 years old, or 4.5 years old, and it's pre-complaint.
It will be admitted only for the historical perspective of 7/15/2015, and not to conclude that it's the situation as of today. So it's relevant as to the historical perspective of the property. 14 admitted for its limited purpose. 15 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. Appears to be Del Norte County complaint of violation, request for investigation to a code enforcement officer. Can you explain, without telling us what any of this says, can you tell us what this represents?
These are the Del Norte County Code Enforcement complaint forms. This is how the public would report suspected violations in their neighborhood or in the community, and they submit them to us at the Community Development Department.
All right. It will be admitted only for the purpose to show, again, historical, if there were complaints, if there were in our complaints on the property, but not specifically as to what each complainant said, unless one or more of these people testify. Do you have any comment on that?
No, I agree, that's the right thing to do, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. 15 is admitted as limited. 16 is 1, 2, 3, 7.5 by 11 photographs. And the first page appears to be the structure at the intersection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, perhaps more vehicles. It's around the exterior of the premises. The next page shows, again, a different view of those, and the next next page, again, a different view. It does show a big metal box that was hooked to previously the side of the property. Next page again shows that's an RV and 1, 2, 3, 3 vehicles. Front of alongside the structure. Next page is again another view of several vehicles, trailers. Vehicle parts. It's indicated in the photograph. Next page, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 vehicles. Exterior appears to be the front corner of the property. The last page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vehicles along the perimeter of the property and by that large metal box. Sir, did you prepare or take these photographs?
Yes, I did.
And the date, if you recall?
2016.
I'm sorry.
2016, the year?
2016. 16 and subsections will be admitted into evidence. As to these exhibits, Mr. Campbell, do you have any more questions from this witness?
I don't.
All right. Did you want to ask Officer Mello any questions, sir?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, Mr. Mello.
Hello?
How are you?
Doing good?
You didn't have any complaints in 2015, am I understanding that correctly?
That was prior to my employment at the county. The code enforcement files do reflect complaints in that area of time.
Okay, so now I'm confused. If you took a picture in 2015 from Google Earth, but you weren't employed as a code officer, why did you take the picture from 2015?
That was an image I got off Google Earth that they took. I had merely ascertained that image within the last year.
Know when the image was taken?
It indicated July of 2015.
So it had some kind of stamp on it, but you're not aware who placed the stamp there. You just got it off the internet, I take it.
I would assume Google Earth, whoever owns and operates that company, put the timestamp on it.
Okay. Well, in the county code, where does it define the number of cars one can have?
There's not a specific amount assigned.
Okay.
Maybe
So it's a subjective term saying an accumulation, correct?
yes.
Okay. And in the county code, it doesn't specify that it can't be more than 5, but no less than 20. It's just an accumulation.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a specific number.
Okay. Does the county code define how they're to be parked, or the distance from the house, or anything like that for a homeowner to know specific violations?
The county nuisance code and the language in that code can be, like you said, subjective and vast in its coverage. So a lot of it is judgment and interpretation of that code, and then the neighborhood. So far as setbacks with vehicles, I'm not aware of any setbacks in regards to vehicles.
Okay. At some point in time, you had personal contact with Mr. Smith, correct?
Yes.
And approximately when was that?
It was early on in the case, around 2016.
Okay. And do you recall what you instructed him to do to satisfy, to get rid of this problem?
Outside of the mail notices, I do not recall our specific verbal conversations.
Do you recall telling him, well, if you can't see it from the street, then it's okay, it wouldn't be a nuisance?
Initially, there was some aspects of that, looking at it from a singular view. Typically, we resolve the accumulation of vehicles by people building fences, and then there's
define what you mean by some aspect of that conversation.
I don't understand what you're asking me.
Well, did you tell him that if you built the fence, if you couldn't see the vehicles, it's not blight, but if I can stand out here and see what someone considers junk vehicles, it's blight?
My understanding, if I advised him to build a fence, it would have been a traditional wood fence or other material that's appropriate for long-term.
Ah, wood fence, okay. So if there's a wood fence here, this wouldn't be a blight situation?
Not in its entirety. I mean, there could still be nuisance conditions that exist behind the fence, but typically under that one county code section, fences do allow for lawful storage of a vehicle.
Okay, in fact, one time I think you told him just build a shop, so you can have as many vehicles as you want, as long as I can't see them.
And typically that, in most general circumstances, that would be acceptable.
Okay. And I take it after speaking with you, Mr. Smith erected some kind of fence that he believed was in compliance with your directive. You spoke to him and he built the fence, right?
So initially with the mail notices and his tarp fence, there was a aspect of compliance for temporary.
Okay, an aspect of compliance. Did you ever close this case because you considered he had complied?
After the installation of the tarp fence, I did close it. At that point in time, I was looking at it from one issue alone, and that was that one particular chapter under county code that allows for storage of vehicles behind the fence. I was not looking at it from the public nuisance code.
I'm confused. You weren't looking at a public nuisance, but you were trying to enforce a public nuisance, and you told him to build a fence.
So Title 7, Chapter 8, Section 310 of the Health and Welfare of the County Code is the declaration of public nuisances. And under those code sections, fence or no fence, the property could still be deemed in compliance and a public nuisance. If you get into Chapter 7, I believe it's, or Title 7, Chapter 9, is where I was looking at the property initially with the fence satisfying that code section.
Okay, can I approach the witness so I can refresh his recollection? The hearing officer was going through photos.
Ms. Campbell, if you wanted to look at those, you can.
Show it with your mark. I showed you in the packet, I think it had 13, and these are dated in, I think you said April. It's showing you Exhibit 7. Is Exhibit 7 your letter saying that, okay, now that your fence is up, you are in partial compliance, keep it up?
So initially in 2016, yes, that was the avenue approach I had. And as I mentioned, that was a singular view of county code. I was not looking at it in a totality of circumstances and failed to recognize the additional public nuisances in the chapter.
Well, you said you took photos from Google Earth seeing the entire property. The case started in 2016, and initially it was an accumulation of junk, an accumulation of junked cars, etc., and complaints about what you could see from the roadway. And in response, you built a fence. You gave him a partial letter in Exhibit 7, showing you Exhibit 8. He took the pictures in 2016 and gave him a letter again in 2016. In 2017, in January, you closed the case saying the property is now in compliance. Is that correct?
With the one code section that I was only looking at that time.
Where does it say one section?
I did not mention that in that Exhibit 8 letter.
So you tell
And
Mr.
the-
Smith to build the fence, and you say, case closed, it's in compliance. Did any condition that existed after the fence not exist before the fence?
The conditions existed.
Okay, so if the conditions existed before the fence, why did you send a letter saying you're now in compliance?
Like I said, I was only looking at it from one code aspect at that time, and I was hoping Mr. Smith would continue to address matters of that property without county involvement. So since he put up the fence and was compliant under that one particular county code, I went ahead and benched the case.
Okay. After
January of 2017, did you have a discussion with Mr. Smith after you closed the case?
No, Mr. Smith ceased contact with me.
Okay, so after he got the letter saying case was closed, you didn't go back out to his house and tell him that there were further violations?
I had mailed notices and whatnot after them dates, but I've never had spoken with him personally since.
Okay. You introduced exhibits showing where the temporary fence, I think it's 10. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you have any independent recollection of how long did this fence stay in disrepair after you took the photo?
After that particular photo, how long did it stay in disrepair?
Yes.
Until I issued the notice of nuisance, and I believe it was January that Mr. Smith corrected that fence violation.
I 1 month, 2 months, I'm sorry, didn't catch how long.
If you can give me a moment and I'll review these documents and I'll give you a better answer.
Thank you. Did it stay in disrepair for very long? That try to help shorten this up.
No, I don't believe it did.
Okay. So the fence that he built after the case was closed, when it was somehow in disrepair, it didn't stay in disrepair long. Did you measure, let me rephrase that, when you spoke to Mr. Smith in regards to any obstruction of the intersection, did you tell him how far back you needed to be able to see through the intersection if he built the fence?
I provided Mr. Smith that the diagram.
Did you send it to him or did you hand it to him?
I mailed it to him.
Okay. Did you have any discussion with him after you mailed that diagram?
No, I did not.
Okay. Have you measured the distance from the middle of the intersection or the pinnacle point of the intersection to where you have a view or the view is obstructed?
No, I have not.
Now, I've heard Mr. Campbell-Bear indicate that everybody knows that a front fence could only be 4 feet. Did you tell Mr. Smith that the fence had to be 6 feet high?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall having any discussion with him about the height of the fence?
No, I do not.
Is there a county code that says a front yard fence can only be 4 feet?
There is different county codes and setbacks depending on where your parcel is located.
I am not. Is there a county code for Darby Street that says the fence can only be 4 feet?
On a corner intersection, yes, I believe so.
Can you cite that, Tony, please?
Title 20, Chapter 48, Section 70 is zoning general provisions, height restrictions, and then subsection B goes into detail about that. No fence, wall, or hedge shall be constructed or grown to exceed 4 feet in height along the front edge or sides of any required front yard of an interior lot, i.e., note a corner lot.
And would you consider this a corner lot?
Yes.
Okay. Is the intersection it's at a 90-degree intersection, or is it more of a curve?
What was that?
Is it, you know, most intersections have stop sign that's a 90-degree.
That's, yes, I described it.
Is this that kind of intersection?
Yes.
Is there a stop sign there?
I don't recall.
You have a photograph of that, don't you, in your packet? You took photos today?
I do not have copies of the photos I took today.
Are there any evidence of ones taken today?
What's that?
Have those been submitted, the ones that are?
I don't believe so.
This is 6 of 10 of one of your earlier exhibits.
What exhibit numbers are
6 of 10, I believe it's either 6 or 13. You have a packet of photographs. Is this a picture of the intersection now?
The picture accurately represents the intersection. I cannot tell if there's a stop sign there or not.
Okay, yeah. You didn't measure how far back the cutoff was, or how far the view is for the intersection?
No, we did not actually get out and measure the corner intersection and get the horizontal setback.
When you met with Mr. Smith and told him about the violation, and prior to you closing the case, did you tell him of any other specific violation that his property constituted a nuisance?
Initially in 2016, like I said, I only addressed the one aspect of county code.
Yes. This is probably better. This is Exhibit 13. Does that show the intersection?
Yes, Exhibit 13, page 1 of 10.
And the tarp fence that you're calling a front yard fence seems to be about 20 yards back to that intersection. Is that the fence we're talking about?
This far fence down by the white Dodge?
Yes.
No, that's not the fence I was concerned about. Over here where the carport is, next to the tree. Yes. And then the debris that often accumulates out towards the tree. Stuff comes and,
Sorry for interrupting
stuff comes and goes. Often he'll park, trailers and stuff, vehicles there and obstruct that viewpoint.
you. It's the fence what you consider the obstruction?
The fence and the carport, and then anything that comes and goes.
And is this tarp fence you're considering a front yard fence?
Yes.
That's on the side of the house next to the cars?
Yes, I can quote the county code that describes.
Okay. And Your Honor, for the court's edification, it's Exhibit 13, 1 of 10, and 6 of 10. That I'm having shown, like, if you want me
I'm
to
sorry
have-
now?
I'm showing him Exhibit 13,
Okay,
page 1 of 10, and page 6 of 10.
yes.
So what part of this fence obstructs 25 or 35 feet back? If you haven't measured it, can you indicate what part of the fence makes the obstruction?
No, I
beyond
cannot.
35 feet.
No, I cannot.
Since you investigated this case, I think you would concede that the car somehow moved from the south side of his property to the north side of his property.
The car?
Cars, plural.
The cars, for the most part, haven't moved.
You took a picture from Google Earth claiming that shows one green car on the north side and 6 to 7 cars on the south side.
The image from Google Earth that was, according to Google Earth, captured in 2015 shows one vehicle on the Hodge side.
Right.
And that vehicle remains there in the current photos we have in the exhibits.
But I thought your testimony was, and it shows that the vehicles haven't moved. Are any of the vehicles from the south side now on the north side?
There's 6 vehicles now on the Hodge side of that residence. I believe that's the north side.
Okay. And could you tell if any of those 6 vehicles are now on the Hodge side?
There's 6 vehicles on the Hodge side.
And how many vehicles remain on the south side of the structure, do you know?
With the tarp fence sump, I don't have a recent count on that, but historically, there's been, I think, like a white Datsun truck and then a gold Pontiac of some sort. And
Well, historically, I'm asking now, from the time that, since the fence has been built, do you know?
I do not know since the fence has been installed.
And if the fence was a permanent 4-foot fence, is it your, from the original complaint about the cars, would you agree that it wouldn't constitute a nuisance, and at least as you saw it early on?
Early on, the 4-foot fence would not conceal the vehicles from public view.
Okay, so a 6-foot fence would have been necessary to conceal the vehicles from public view.
If we're solely looking at that one county code section that allows for fences as a means of compliance.
So it's the fact, not the number, the fact that you can see the vehicles, not the number of vehicles that constitutes the nuisance?
The inoperative state of the vehicles with visibility from the right-of-way.
So how many inoperative vehicles does it take to constitute a nuisance?
There's no defined number.
All right, thank you. Nothing further?
Any further
Not of
questions?
this witness, no, but
Mr. Campbell, did you have any follow-up questions to Officer Mello?
Yes, Mr. Mello, when you initially opened this case, there was no fence, correct?
That is correct.
And the complaints, what was the nature of the complaints you received at that time?
The accumulation of dilapidated vehicles.
And Exhibit 8 is, as has been stated, a letter from you stating that the property is now in compliance. Just to clarify, what you meant is now the issues that have been complained about at that point were remedied by the fence.
The way I consider it, yes.
Exhibit number 9 is a letter from you, the property owner. Could you read the second to last paragraph?
I understand the conundrum here. Your fence placement was to comply with county code regulating inoperative vehicle storage on private property. Now complainants have reported your fence as visual blight.
Ms. Reese seemed confused by the chronology, but if I have it correctly, you addressed the complaints, told them they were compliant, and then got different complaints and reopened the case?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
thank you. No, it's not that I'm confused with the chronology here. What I'm confused about is you considered the case closed in January of 2017 after he built the fence. And then, after you determined it was no longer a blight, somebody else called you on the exact same complaint, complaining it's the fence now that they don't like. So the fence that you wrote off on in January is now the blight in March.
The complainants were never satisfied with the fence as a means to deal with the vehicles.
The complainants were never satisfied. So is the nuisance itself so subjective that you could be satisfied, but they can keep complaining and you file another nuisance abatement?
At that particular time in my career, I had just started, so I was relatively new at this job, and I was only looking at code violations from a singular code, not from the nuisance code.
So I guess the answer to my question is yes, it's totally subjective. The fence you thought was in compliance, a neighbor thought it wasn't.
Yes, neighbors disagreed.
All right, nothing further.
Anything further?
Not of this witness.
All right. We just have a couple questions here. So considering the whole chronology here, it started out, the problems at 430 Darby started out as a fence issue, maintaining inoperable vehicles from sight from others, is that correct?
It started out as a vehicle issue and then progressed into the fence issue.
All right. And at least, as I understand your testimony, at the beginning of your investigation, you did not consider any nuisance issues, is that correct?
No, I was not considering them. I was looking at it solely as a vehicle issue and not the public nuisance code, which, outlines different, basically blight, visual blight. I was not looking in the zoning codes as the storage of 200 yards or more of junk. I wasn't looking at it from the perspective of being a residential district with what would be defined under county code as a junkyard. I was solely looking at it as inoperative vehicles.
All right, and now, as of today's date, considering your last view, as your understanding of the last view of the property, you're indicating that there are public nuisance factors with the dismantled or inoperable vehicles?
Public nuisance stems from the property entirety as a whole, the great accumulation of, whether you want to call them vehicles or scrap metal or junk, the substandard fence.
Okay. Is there, for example, did you form any opinion as to whether there was any unsightly or blighted conditions in the neighborhood because of the condition at 430 Darby?
Yes, I find the conditions at 430 Darby detrimental to the quality of life and the values of the property in that neighborhood.
Did you consider anything about attractive nuisance? By that I mean either adults or children, easy access to a number of inoperable vehicles.
If someone has a will, they would definitely find a way onto his property, but has not been raised by the complainants, or I have not heard of anything of that nature taking place.
The number of vehicles, as I understand, there may be up to 10. Is that your testimony at the present time?
I would be comfortable saying that for sure there's 10 vehicles.
All right. Is there anything about a residential area and regarding having dismantled vehicles in the as situated at 430 Darby?
Yeah, so 430 Darby is zoned R1 MFH, was basically a single family residence zoning with the option to put modular trailers on it. And under the public nuisance code, specifically discusses junkyards in residential areas. Definition of junkyard is under Title 20, Chapter 4, Section 420. And then in the public nuisance code, Title 7, Chapter 8, Section 310, under like Paren 10, the presence of a junkyard or automobile dismantling yard except in an industrial zone pursuant to a special use permit.
On those matters I just asked you about, have you formed an opinion that there are these violate a public nuisance?
Yes, I did.
I have no further questions to Officer Mello.
Well, I have a few, since the court has opened up areas beyond the original testimony.
You're welcome to.
And did you ever measure the square feet of any scrap metal that he had up there? Determining it was scrap metal.
So just based off my experience in life and training here, just looking at one vehicle, what are they roughly 4 or 5 feet wide, 8 to 10 feet long? So if you do the math on how many vehicles he has, it quickly exceeds 200 square feet of metal.
Assuming that they're inoperable or junk vehicles. Did you determine that, since you don't know whether or not the vehicles moved from the south side to the north side, whether or not they were inoperable?
It would be subjective whether one thinks those vehicles are junk or not. Code enforcement says the opinion that those vehicles are severely dilapidated and meet that criteria of scrap metal.
But if you can't see them, then they're not blight.
They are, you can see them through the tarp fence. The tarp fence is transparent. They're still visible to the public.
Is your testimony they're readily visible through the tarp fence?
They still can be seen from Hodge. You can see 2, 3 of the vehicles through the fence.
Anything can be seen if you have a will. You can jump on a ladder and look in someone's backyard. Is the code that subjective that if I see an outline of a vehicle, it's nuisance?
I find the conditions there are unsuitable for a residential neighborhood, and definitely I support the property owners in their complaints that the condition of that property impacts their property values. And Mr. Smith has proven long-term that he'll let that tarp fence dilapidate and ultimately expose them vehicles again.
So I'm back to the same question. If you closed the case in 2017 because you couldn't see the vehicles with the tarp fence, you've changed your opinion now in 2019 that since I can see an outline of the vehicles, it's public nuisance.
My desire initially with that singular viewpoint there, once again, I stated that it was relatively new in code enforcement and didn't look at the property from the nuisance code. And that Mr. Smith said he was working towards building a shop to store them vehicles, and in an effort to work with Mr. Smith, was willing to accept the tarp fence as a temporary solution.
So your testimony is then based upon the number of vehicles he's running a scrapyard?
Once again, there's no definite number indicated in county code what constitutes that.
Well, wouldn't someone who's running a scrapyard sell parts before you make the assumption they're running a scrapyard?
The definition of junkyard in the county code does not indicate any type of commerce needing to take place. It's just the square footage
Of the scrap metal?
of the material stored, yes.
And you're determining the scrap metal are the cars,
Yes.
okay? But if you can't see the cars, then they're not scrap metal. You put them in a shop, they're not scrap metal.
Putting the vehicles in a shop would be reasonable. Leaving them out in our coastal climate to continue rotting as they have been is unreasonable.
Now, you testified about the comparison with other property values in that neighborhood. Wouldn't it be fair to say that the neighbor directly to the east of Mr. Smith has got several mobile homes that are deteriorating on the lot and would be much more of a nuisance,
And
visually blight?
that particular property was on the calendar today as well as a public nuisance.
And then the property directly north of his in the corner of Hodge and Darby is also a blighted property.
Not aware of that property.
You're not aware of the property with the RV, with the brushes growing up through it and the Volvo sitting out in front?
I don't have specific recollection right now. I have been out obviously in that area, but
Okay. I'm trying to get the comparison to the properties directly adjacent to Mr. Smith's, that both of those seem to be blighted properties in worse condition than his, if his in fact is a public nuisance.
if referencing the Volvo property further north, I can't recall the cross street, I am aware of that property. We have not received any complaints on that property, and 95% of the code enforcement caseload is complaint driven due to limited staffing.
So if you hadn't received a complaint on Mr. Smith's property, then it wouldn't be considered blight. It's the fact that somebody's complaining about it.
What was that?
It's the fact that somebody's complaining about it that makes it on your radar.
If the public's complaining, then we'll investigate and determine if there's a public nuisance or not.
Okay, nothing further.
Just one quick question. How long have you been a code enforcement officer, sir, with Del Norte County?
Around June 2016, I was hired.
And is it, in your experience as a code enforcement officer, have there been cases from time to time where a case may be closed for one reason or another, and then that same property is opened again for further investigation?
Yes, due to limited staff time and funding, oftentimes if we can gain substantial compliance at a property, we will not pursue other violations.
All right. I have no further questions. Any further on this witness?
Not on this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell, I believe this lady would, if you would step to the podium, please, and could you state your name, and is it okay to list your address or not?
Yeah, I guess.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, my name is Cheryl Harms.
Harms, H-A-R-M-S?
Yes. And I live at 1000 Ames Way.
And where is that in relation to 430 Darby, if you know?
It's up the private road on Ames Way, all the way at the end.
How far would you say your property is from?
Oh, I don't know,
Darby?
8 city blocks.
Okay. Do you ever drive past?
Yes.
On a regular basis, or just?
Yes, almost daily.
All right. And what do you have to tell us about your
Okay.
observations?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I mean, I know the rules are relaxed, but this is an ambush witness. I've got zero discovery on whether she's a complainant, how many times that she's driving by. And now I hear that she lives on Ames Way, which I don't think it's a connected roadway.
It's the only way, you have to
Eight
drive
blocks.
past Humboldt.
Actually, just
But,
let me ask.
Sorry.
all of which I'm finding out on the fly, and we think there's got to be some modicum of discovery afforded to the litigants.
Well, since in evidence is the historical perspective of at least 5 or 6 complainants, and you had that information, and there's always the possibility at hearings 1 or more of those people may come. I will allow your testimony.
A couple of the neighbors are out of town, or they would have been here too.
All right.
But speaking of history, I don't know what happened to old files, but I know that Dave Mason, prior to Dominic,
Yeah, I'm going to object to what she knows what Dave Mason did or said or...
I don't think he did anything, but I personally turned in
Okay.
that property.
Here's the process. Just tell us
Okay.
your own personal observations,
Okay.
not what anybody else told you.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay,
And it is Harms, H-A-R-M-S, and your first name again?
Cheryl with a C.
C-H-E-R-Y-L?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just saying that possibly Dominic didn't get a complete file on the same property because it had been, for me, I had turned it in prior, and I had even taken pictures and brought them in here to the H Street and turned them in, and I don't remember what year that was.
That was under a different code enforcement officer.
Right,
All
but
right.
I have been keeping track of the last 4 times, the last 4 years that I've turned them in. And the debris in the yard is one thing, but it's really awful is the fabric fence. A lot of the debris in the yard also, because when you're driving to get to the corner, there's no stop sign on Darby and Hodge, and no stop sign on Darby and Ames. So people just go wherever. And of course, you know, it's rural, and there's lots of deer and elk. Sometimes 50 elk at a time will be wandering. And you can't see oncoming traffic. That's my major concern, is to be able to see around that corner to see traffic.
So if you're going down what street and you're making
Okay,
a
I would
turn
go
on-
down Ames Way, and I would turn right on Darby, and then I would turn left on Hodge. And I have pictures, Your Honor, from 2017 when he put up the curtain wall, and then 2019 with a
Would you
kind
like
of the
to
same.
Judge, I'm
present
gonna
those to
object.
me?
Once again, I'm not seeing these photos. I've got the photos of the code enforcement officer.
Well, let me see if there's any relevance to it, then we'll discuss that.
Personal photos. And the date's on the back.
All right, there's a number of them here. Did you personally take all these
Yes, I
photographs?
did.
That they shouldn't come in, I will mark them.
Because the code enforcement obligation that he was under investigation for was the quote-unquote dilapidated cars, and then they closed the case. And now I've got a neighbor taking photographs of his property. I don't know how she gained access to it. Some of it seems to be on his property.
Well, when we continue, we will, I will ask questions. Do you have some red stickers to mark these, please? I need a bunch of them.
It does. It's just I've got basically two prosecutors I'm doing, and I'm gonna see myself in front of the Superior Court. That's right. Superior Court. This way. This way.
Right here, look how high that bush is. You can't see it.
It's pretty apparent here, you can see it. It's apparent here, you can see everything.
If you want to look at this, 17 through 25 here, if you want to look at these, Mr. Reese. What was the 25, my last number on those?
25.
Thank you.
This is the, this is Ames. She's going, you can see that. You can always see that. She's going west.
She's going west. Turning right. On the party. Left on the lodge.
second set was marked from 26 to 37. And let me hand these photos. Do you have the first set, Mr. Reese?
The second set.
Okay. If you could hand these both sets to the witness. Thank you, Mr. Reese. All right. Take the first set with the earlier numbers. And are you indicating that you took each one of those photographs?
Yes, I am. I did.
And you put a date in back of the photos?
Yes.
And is that a Polaroid or some kind of, what kind of camera?
No, my,
Cell
no,
phone?
no, digital, I have a digital camera.
Okay, all right. And could you please tell the number on the back of it, of the photograph, and tell us what it portrays and when you took it?
Oh, okay. Number 17, February 2017. That's when he put up the fabric fence.
And is there anything that concerned you about that fabric fence?
Well, when he first put it up, it said under construction.
Okay,
So I thought maybe he was doing something.
all right.
But visibility as far as driving, that is my major concern. If he wants stuff in his yard, that's not on me, but you know, you got to see. And
You're saying you had difficulty coming around the corner
yes,
because of the fence itself?
on the Darby and Hodge side.
Okay. Next, number 18, please.
Okay, 18, that's a picture,
The date, please.
February 2017. Oh, wait a minute. They're not in order.
They get out of order.
Yeah, 22, 19, 18. Okay.
All right.
Number 18, February 2017. The photo is taken from the corner of Ames and Darby, and it's just taken a picture of the, let's see, the left side of his house with the fabric fence.
Okay. Anything concern you about that?
No.
All right. 19?
19, February 2017. It shows the left side of his house with the danger construction level or construction area sign on it. Number 20 is February 2017. And this picture is the front of the house. You can see there's a little plastic garage on the house, right in front of the house with a white car. And to the left, there was the fabric fence, but it was farther back than what it is now. It's not quite by the tree in the front yard, to the right side.
So you're saying?
More
in your opinion, the fence was
accumulation.
moved back?
When the fence was first constructed, it was smaller in area.
Okay.
And the cars that are not behind the fence are the ones that evidently run and that are being used. 21, this is on Darby, looking at the left side of his house with
What's
the
the date?
February 2017. He had a little area that you could drive on from Hodge to his front yard. He rocked that in. That's right by the tree. This picture shows the fabric fence and the, I guess, storage container thing. 22, February 2017. This is a picture on the Hodge side, looking at the house and the fabric fence.
Anything concern you about that? Or have you already?
That's just a picture of the
Okay.
fence, yeah. Number 23 is February 2017, and that's another photo of the fence and the storage container. 24, construction area, that's from Hodge, looking at the construction sign by the fabric fence and the container. And then Exhibit 25, February 2017. A picture of the Hodge side, looking at the container and the fence with some debris by the container.
Is that done with the first package?
Yes.
Could I have those, please? And let me just quickly review, see if I have any questions about that. All right. You could go through the next set, please. Did they get out of order?
No, I'm making sure they are in order.
All right. And if you could, when you go through those, if you see something that is of concern to you as a neighbor,
Okay.
you talked about visibility on some of those, and you talked about the fence. For example, if you see anything about cars or parts or anything that you think is out of order, for lack of better words, please bring that up.
Okay.
And Your Honor, again, I'm going to interpose an objection for the record purposes. Basically, I've got two litigants that I'm having to compete against, where the court is inviting what you want to hear as testimony.
Overruled, I'm trying to clarify and speed things up to make it more readily ascertainable for everyone. A clear record. Okay, please go for it.
Okay, number 26, dated 3/13/19. It's the corner of Hodge and Darby. You can see the tree in the front yard, and there's like a little I'm trying to think. You cannot see the fence. I mean, you can see the fence, but it's not on the corner here. There's a tent kind of garage thing and a trailer, and then you see the fabric fence. Number 27, 3/13/19. It's just the same picture, just farther back away.
Okay.
um, 28, 31319. This is Hodge Street and the fabric curtain wall and with the outline of 2 cars.
Are they inside?
They're inside the fabric, yeah. Okay. Number 29, 31319. This is Hodge Street, and this is a picture of the fabric wall and his storage container. This is number 36, no, 30. Number 30. This is looking into his yard from the street on Darby and seeing the Jeep. And there's a red car in the back that I don't know if it works. And then the trailer, and then a tent-like garage thing. And 31 is on the Hodge side, and it's looking over the fence, and it's 3 rusted cars and 2 metal boxes, and one says explosives, keep fire away, and some other debris.
Is that inside the fence or outside?
Inside the fence. 32, dated 3/13/19. This is a picture of inside the fabric fence on the Hodge side. And there are, is that red one? Yeah. 6 cars. Number 33, 3/13/19. It's the front of the house, and you can see 2 cars parked out front, the white one and the Jeep. And the canvas garage to the right of the house. 34, 3/13/19. A picture of the front of the house. With the canvas little garage thing and a trailer parked next to the tree. And that's on Darby looking towards the corner of Hodge. Uh, 35, 3/13/19. It's the left side of the property behind the curtain, the fence, and you can see his trailer and a bunch of miscellaneous things and metal things and 2 cars. Number 36, 3/13/19. That's looking at the left side of the house. You can see the fabric fence and the RV and the truck. Uh, 3/7, 3/13/19. This is must be the property line, because I see the fence here and his fabric fence, and he's got like a little shop on the corner, left-hand corner, all the way to the back. And it's filled with things, and it looks like that the wall is totally gone now. There's a roof, but no wall on that side facing the neighbor. And that's it.
If you could hand me this package, please, I'll just take a quick, any questions? This, exhibit 32, you see that?
Yes.
31319 appears to be at least 5 cars outside of the fence.
That's inside the fence.
Okay, I got you. That explains the question I had. It's 35. If you could take a look at that. And was that readily admissible? And this appears to be an array of items acquired, for lack of better word, maybe junk stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have an
And
opinion on that?
I see 2 cars, and I see a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know what is, but it looks metal.
These exhibits 17 through 37 will be admitted into evidence.
I'm still objecting, Your Honor, and I've heard that she's had to stand and basically trespass to get a view, stuff that's behind the fence, inside the property, which I don't even know is subject to what we're litigating today. But the whole process of how this witness came to come testify, I find objectionable. And now I'm hearing that from the code officer, if it's not in public view, it's not a nuisance, but I've got a witness that's getting vantage points above the fence line and start taking pictures what's inside his property to be admissible for a nuisance abatement. I find it very far afield of this hearing and objectionable in the methodology that the court's used today.
Let me ask a few questions before I rule on that. Were you working with any county agent when you took
No.
those pictures?
No.
Did you actually step on his property?
No, I didn't. I stepped on the curb on the Hodge side. Is that his
All right.
property?
And so, having heard that, your objections overruled. You talked about the fence, fabric fence, and particularly the, for lack of better, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, let's just say the cars that appear to be rusted, let me leave it at that. Inside the yard, what's the most you've ever seen that you recall?
Before the fence, there was probably 10 to 12 different vehicles.
Did you ever see any of those around?
Only the ones that are parked on the outside of the fence now.
Okay.
No.
Never seen any of those inside the fence, right?
No.
Does actually, I guess you're here today to provide us information. Do you personally know Mr. Smith, David, or Ruby?
Yes, I know them.
All right. Have you personally talked to them about the
No, I haven't.
issues? Okay. Concerning the situation at Darby, do you have an opinion as to whether that's a nuisance
My
that
opinion.
concerns you?
What concerns me, Your Honor, is that everything that is in the yard grows, and it has been for the last so many years. That's my number one concern. when you could see
You say
around,
growing, are you talking about growing in number?
yes, growing in number. He had a lawn at one time, and then they put in gravel to park more stuff.
All right. Do you have an opinion as to whether the situation is again, not to put words in your mouth, but anything concerning unsightly, blighted, attractive nuisance, or anything of that nature?
I'm going to object to the court asking her to qualify, basically anything beyond a lay opinion. You're asking for to render opinion on a conclusion of law that it's totally subjective here. First of all, with the code enforcement officer, he might be qualified to render an opinion if it qualifies for blight, but not an average lay witness. I know the court's trying to make the case here, but I'm going to object
Well,
to that opinion being rendered.
I will say,
Well, let me rule on that.
Oh, sorry.
I believe a lay witness can give an opinion as to a quote blighted or normal condition, and she's obviously here she has some concerns, or she wouldn't be here, and I want to know those concerns. So your objection's overruled. Can you answer the question?
my major concern is that it keeps growing. Whatever it is he has in his yard keeps growing by the numbers. A long time ago, he had a fence in a yard. The fence was taken out so things were parked. I could understand that. But things keep just appearing. There's more and more and more throughout the years.
All right. I think anything else you have to add or say about the condition of the property at 430 Darby?
No, just that it is a concern for not just the the neighborhood too, but it is a concern. If it's valuable stuff, more power to them, But I don't know, and we need to be able to see around that blind corner when we drive.
Okay.
That's
All right.
it.
Did you, wait a minute, Mr. Reese may have some questions for you.
I do, Your Honor.
All right.
First of all, kind of caught me off guard that you said you knew the Mr. and Mrs. Smith. How do you know them?
I worked with her at the school district a million years ago.
You work with her. How long did you work with her?
I didn't work directly with her, but I knew her from the school district. And we would go to trainings, and I'd see her there and always say hi.
How long did you work with her?
I don't know how long she worked at the district. I worked there.
How long did you work with her?
I didn't work directly with her, no. I knew her from the school district because we both were employed by the school district.
You ever carry on a conversation with her?
Now and again, yes.
Okay. Considering that you worked around her and you've had conversations with her in the past, did you ever think of directly speaking to Ms. Smith about what you felt objectionable about their house?
No.
When did you first start making complaints about 430 Darby?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I've only kept track the last 4 years.
Okay. Have you made complaints about any other property?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What other properties did you make complaints about?
The one across the street and the trailers of Sutton's.
Okay, so Dennis Sutton's properties and the one directly north of Mr. Smith?
No.
No?
Directly his front door looking at their front door.
Oh, right, that's the road across the street. That's east. You make any complaints about the properties on the left side of Hodge if you're facing east?
No.
Make any complaints of any other houses on Ames, Darby, or Hodge?
No.
Were you in communication with Mr. Mello in regards to your concerns with the Darby Street place?
Only that I got, for the first time ever, a hearing thing. And then he called to tell me when it was changed. And then last night he called to tell me that the hearing was today.
Did you speak with him during the complaining process?
No, I mailed my paperwork in.
Oh, so you've never had a direct conversation with a county employee about blight or nuisance?
Just
Darby.
that I would be here.
Okay, so you never,
Oh, and voice my concern about,
you never came down and said, Mr. Mello, I'm a neighbor, I don't like this property.
No.
Okay. What motivated you to take the pictures, the 37 pictures that you brought in today?
when I thought, when he put up the fabric fence in 2017, I thought, okay, we'll see what happens. So I took pictures then. And then it just seemed like it got worse. So then I thought, okay, if I take more pictures now, I can show a difference between 2 years.
Okay, I thought you earlier testified at the very beginning of it, if you want stuff in his yard, you're okay with that.
If he wants stuff in his yard.
Okay.
I just think it's strange, you know, if you want to have things in your yard, that's, I guess, okay. It just,
So once he covered up the stuff in his yard with the fabric fence, why did you take pictures of what was behind the fence?
I guess because the fence just seemed like lipstick on a pig. It just was to hide it, and I knew that was to hide it, but
In your opinion, did it hide the stuff enough that you had to take a picture?
or I wouldn't have taken his, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I took a picture of it because,
You wouldn't have taken a picture if you could see it. So you peeked over the fence to take a picture to see what was still there?
yeah. It's all still there.
Okay. And one of your concerns was it keeps growing. I heard your testimony early that at the beginning it seemed like he had 10 to 12 cars. Now he has about 8 cars. Is that accurate?
I don't know exactly how many he has anymore.
Okay.
And depending on what's parked and who, you know, what's there's usually 3 cars that are drivable, I think. The little white one and the Jeep and the truck. And I know he drives a motorcycle. But the other cars I don't see.
So you know at least 3 of the vehicles he uses all the time or uses
Yeah.
frequently. Now, if you put up a permanent fence, would you still be taking pictures to see what's behind it?
No, I think I'm pretty much done taking pictures.
No, let me rephrase that. Since you took pictures when he had this fabric fence, if that fence had been a wooden fence, would you have taken pictures to see what was behind it?
I don't know.
Your testimony is that, I'm going to show you what the government's introduced as Exhibit 13. 1 of 10. Is this Ames Ware here?
Yes.
And it's your testimony that this fence here blocks your view?
When you're here, coming around this way, when you're on Darby and you're making a left to go down Hodge, you can't always see oncoming traffic. There's no stop here, and people just go around both ways. Yeah,
Sweeping corners on 90-degree corners.
yeah. You used to be able to see it before this garage thing got there.
So it's the garage that
Okay, yeah,
So it's the garage that would be more of a blockage of any view.
okay.
Have you measured how far you can see beyond that intersection?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever had what you would consider a negative run-in with Mr. Smith or Ms. Smith?
No,
Have you ever yelled at them from the roadway?
no, I have not.
One of the,
Excuse
I heard one of your comments earlier saying if it's valuable, more power to them.
Yeah, I mean,
So if the
I know
cars-
he used to race cars.
Okay? So if the cars were valuable cars, I guess you wouldn't have the same issue, or would you still have the same issue?
Well, I don't know, I guess I would, because to me, if it was valuable, I would keep it safe.
Okay? So if the cars were up behind a wooden fence, that still would bother you because you think they're sitting there rotting away.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you know, in this weather, everything rusts.
Now, the two shots where you had to stand on your tippy toes or stand on the curb, you did that because you couldn't see what was behind the fence from the street. Correct?
Correct.
And I think it's your biggest concern right now is you think that the fence itself, this temporary fence, is the biggest blight issue.
It's all a blight issue as far as I'm concerned. What I'm saying is, it's gotten progressively worse with the amount of items kept in the yard and then the fence.
You were aware, I guess you are now, that the county code officer, after he built the fence, closed the case because they considered it was in compliance?
I heard that today, yes.
And was it your letter, was your letter to the county complaining about the fence itself in February of 2017?
I don't know if I have that copy. I can't remember. I don't have a copy of that one.
That one, how many did you send after, say, January of 2017?
3, February 24th, 17, 4/18/18, and 1/14/19.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Mr. Campbell, do you have any questions?
I do not.
All right, I just have you talked to neighbors about 430 Darby?
Yes.
All right. Do you personally know if any of those neighbors complained to the county?
I
Absent
think
hearsay,
maybe
Judge,
3.
how-
I'm sorry.
Absent multiple levels of hearsay, how would she know, even if the rules are so relaxed, to have her come in and testify what other neighbors may have said really stretches?
I'll withdraw the question. Okay, I have no further
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm done.
questions. Yes, thank you for coming. Mr. Campbell, any other witnesses?
No.
Any other evidence to present?
No.
All right, the county closes. Mr. Reese, do you want to?
Yeah, Mr. Smith needs to be sworn in to testify, Judge.
All right. Mr. Smith, could you
Stand, you can
please
go
step
straight
to
back.
the podium here?
Never mind, I'll let you go to the podium.
Could you state your full name and spell your last name, please?
David Adam Smith, SMITH.
And What is your address, please?
430 Darby Street.
All right. And would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter now pending at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
All right. Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Your Honor. Afternoon, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon.
You're, take it, the property owner at 430 Darby?
Yes, I am.
How long have you lived there?
Approximately 22 years.
Okay. Prior to this, the origination of this case, you have any neighbors complaining about your home to you or to the county, to your knowledge?
I've had them tell me I should only have 2 cars.
Who and when did someone say you should only have 2 cars?
Well, one of them was Bonnie Adams. And that is something that even code enforcement officers approached me, both code enforcement officers, and said I should only have 2 cars. And when I repeatedly asked them, what is the code? They said it doesn't exist, but I should only have 2 vehicles.
And any of your other neighbors complain about your vehicles to you?
No.
The young lady that just testified, do you know her?
In passing.
And
I actually worked with her husband in the past.
would you say you're friends or acquaintances or know each other well enough to have a conversation?
Not normally.
Has she ever come to you saying, hey, I find your property objectionable, can you do something with your fence?
No, she hasn't.
Have you had any negative interactions with her?
I've had her, I don't know how you could put it, rude looks, and I've actually had her husband drive into my driveway and almost run my legs over when I was underneath the vehicle, but I have no evidence of that, so.
Has she ever complained to you about your fence or now a shed obstructing her vision on the intersection of Darby and Hodge?
Well, she has never stated that, but the code enforcement officer has notified me of that, and I noted the fact that you can see further around the corner in my direction than you could the opposite direction, and Ames Way is completely blocked. The pictures that they are showing now, someone cut down the brush before they took the picture, and which is now over 8 feet tall, going all the way to the intersection. So you can't even see, as you approach from Ames, you cannot see down Darby.
Well, that's not because of your property, correct?
No.
It's because of the property that's located on Darby and Ames.
Yes.
And showing you what's been previously marked by the government. It's 13, pages 1 of 10, 6 of 10. Is that
That's looking down Darby towards Ames from Hodge. And I can see all the way down the street. In fact, in the, which one is this? Image 6 of 10 shows that from that point, you can see all the way to Ames Way.
So no way does your fence block any view from Darby and Hodge to Ames Way, because you can see Ames Way in the upper left-hand corner, correct?
Yes, those are the mailboxes at the intersection of Ames Way and Darby.
And court subdivisions, exhibit 13, 6 and 10. Showing you number 1 of 10 and number 13, what does that project?
That's further out into Darby, looking down Darby.
Does anything on your property obstruct the view on Darby or Hodge for 35 feet from that intersection?
No,
Court subdivisions, page 1 of 10, exhibit 13. Now, I take it that you're a car enthusiast,
yes, I am.
and how many inoperable cars do you have?
None.
How
They're not
many?
all registered, but they're all operable. I've got 3 drag race cars. I have I road race and autocross also. I have motorcycles. I run a drag bike. Sometimes I go to the drag strip and I run 3 vehicles in one day.
Now, in relation to a
complaint that Mr. Mello told you about, did you and Officer Mello come up with some kind of solution in regards to the car issue?
I was told to erect a fence 6 feet high, and as long as it met the requirements of being able to see around the intersection, I was fine.
When approximately did you have that conversation with the code enforcement officer?
Initially, I believe that was in, towards the end of 2016. And then we discussed it again in 2017, the earlier part of the year.
When did you start construction on the fence that was the remedial measure in this case?
2016?
Call when in about 2016?
It was towards the end of the year.
Okay. At some point in time, did you get the fence completed around the perimeter, not the perimeter of your property, but the interior perimeter, because I take it from these photos, you did a setback a little bit.
Yes.
How far did you set back the fence from what you believed your boundary line was?
I set it back approximately 3 feet from the curb. And then the other portion, I went along even to the face of my house.
Okay, and your house doesn't abut the property line?
No, it does not.
And-
Because by the county regs, my house is a Hodge address.
Okay. And I note on Exhibit 13, 1 of 10, it appears that the fence line that you constructed is behind the width of your large pickup truck.
Yes, it is.
So is your pickup truck approximately 7 feet wide?
About 7.5. It's a Dodge Dually.
So by that photograph, if the property line was the edge of your truck, it'd be about 7 feet, you said it back.
Yes.
When did you complete the construction of this remedial fence?
And okay, just 2017, I did the second portion. The weather started storming really bad.
You ever receive a letter from Dominic Mello in regards to the case being closed?
Yes, I did.
Okay, can you walk us through that, please? When did you?
It
showing
was in
you-
January of 2017, if I recall.
Showing you the mark of Government Exhibit 8. Did you receive that letter from the county?
Yes, I did.
Prior to receiving that letter, did the code enforcement officer tell you that there was a totality of circumstances you had to remedy by making this fence? Or was it you had to put your cars out of public view?
It was pretty much I had to get my vehicles out of public view.
Okay, so back in 2016, when you had the contact with a code enforcement officer, has anything changed about the nature of the overall stuff that you have in your yard from then to today?
Not that I recall. I've actually gotten rid of some things.
Okay, so you had the same amount of stuff then. The code officer tells you that the enforcement issue is your cars. Still have almost the same amount of stuff you have today, and you received a case closed letter.
Yes.
After you received the case closed letter, did you have any immediate contact with Dominic Mello?
No.
Okay. Did you have contact with Mr. Mello sometime after this letter saying that you're in compliance in regard to your fence?
I had no further contact after that letter.
Did you receive a letter from him?
Yes, I received a letter in beginning of this year.
Did you receive a letter in March of 2017 in regards to the conundrum with your...
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Forgive me. Yes, I did, and I came in and discussed this matter with him. And when I asked what the what is the appropriate or required material, I was not given an answer. I was told that the complainant was to make the determination of what is and what isn't acceptable materials.
So he told you in January, fence is okay, case closed. Now in March, you have contact with him because a neighbor doesn't like the material that your fence is made out of.
Correct.
Did he tell you there was other code violations now other than the material of the fence?
No.
Did you ask him, oh, what's my remedy here? If you told me to build a 6-foot fence, what's going to satisfy my neighbor? Did you have that conversation?
Yes, I did, and I did not get an answer from that. In fact, I was told if they didn't like what I built it out of the next time, I was to tear it down and reconstruct it again. And I did make the...
Did he tell you to go to any county code for guidance?
No.
Did he tell you that, oh, by the way, you got too much stuff that you're accumulating? Or did he just tell you to fix the fence again?
He did make a comment about my vehicles being scrap metal. Personally, I don't find my vehicles scrap metal. They are operating vehicles. I realize they do need body and paint, but to me, that does not make it scrap metal.
Well, do they have value?
Yes.
Over and above crushed value?
Oh, God, yes. One of them's a 66 GTO. I got 3 classic Pontiacs sitting in one area alone. And all of them, well,
Now,
2 of them I raised.
Mr. Mello had a photograph from Google Earth from 2015 showing, from the best I can tell, 4, maybe 5 cars that are on the southeast side of your property. Did any of those cars move to the north side of your property?
Yes.
How did you move the vehicles from the south side to the north side?
I started them and drove them over.
Have they, there's a green car in there that's put in the 2015 photo and in the later 20s.
Well, it's even turned around.
That's what I was getting to.
Yes.
So that's also been moved.
Yes. Transmission slips, but it does move.
Has Mr. Mello told you that, well, as long as I can't see the cars, you're in compliance?
That's what I was told.
The photographs that your neighbor took that are, let's see, the court has number 31 and 26.
Yes.
Can you see any of those items from?
No, you cannot. Person would either have to have a ladder or hold the camera well over their head.
And you were told if it was out of sight, and this, prior to this case being closed, that it wasn't a nuisance.
Correct.
What was your objective to building the fence? If the item was out of sight?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Mello has indicated today that, well, you must be running a junk or a scrap yard. Do you sell car parts?
No, even though I have had multiple times that people have been sent to my house to try and purchase car parts, the only parts I have ever sold was complete vehicles. I am not in the junk business. I do not scrap out my vehicles. Although I have had a number of occasions that people have knocked on my door at all hours of the night and day wanting to buy parts, and I explained to them the same thing. I do not sell
Do
parts.
you have scrap, dilapidated, unusable parts laying on the south side of your residence?
No, I do not.
Now, your neighbor testified about junk accumulated in your front yard. Trying to get your, looks like it was taken fairly recent photo. Do you recognize that photo?
Yes, I do. That is my house.
Is there any debris or junk or garbage in the front yard?
I have a little clippings on top of my bin, but beyond that, I don't have any garbage. If you find my motorcycle trailer garbage, I'm sorry.
She mentioned that you have a trailer out in the front yard. Is that trailer an operable trailer?
Yes, it is.
What's it used for?
Hauling motorcycles. I have multiple motorcycles.
When's the last time you used it?
Last month? I mean, I don't tow it around all the time. There's no need to.
Did you ask Mr. Mello, what is it you could do to satisfy him other than getting rid of your cars to satisfy the neighbor?
He gave me no indication.
You got a letter in December 1st, 2016 saying the case is closed, you're in compliance. You get a letter shortly thereafter saying a conundrum about the fence, you know, you're maybe out of compliance. Did you ever have a discussion as what do I have to do to satisfy this one neighbor who's making a complaint?
Well, I was told I needed to change my fence material.
So if you changed your fence material, then you're in compliance again? Is that what you're led to believe?
Yes. But I could get no information as to what material I needed to construct my fence out of. And incidentally, since then, I did change the material. I found something a lot more durable.
Now, the government's introduced some photos showing that at some point in times, the fence seems to be in need of repair. Can you explain that?
Well, one of the photographs, I recall seeing my 71 Grand Prix. When I went to work that morning, that section of fence was fine. When I was driving home that night, I noticed that it was damaged. I looked closer at it, and it appeared to be cut, and I repaired it immediately.
So, has your remedial fence, has it stayed in a point of disrepair for any period longer than, say, a day?
No, I repaired as soon as possible. The worst was the material started to go bad, and I ordered material, but I was patching it together as quickly as I could to maintain a fence until the new material showed up.
Let me ask you this, why did you make it translucent? Why didn't you just put up a wood fence?
Well, because I do plan on building a garage. I've just had, life got in the way. The money I have in the bank to complete my garage, my wife got into pharmacy school, and we're keeping that as a buffer in case she needs it to complete her education.
So you built the remedial fence as a part-time measure till you build your solid wooden fence?
Yes. And I constructed my garage. The south side of my house, I am planning on putting in a 24 by 41 foot garage.
Is there any material that you can use temporarily that is not translucent to satisfy your neighbor?
I have no idea. I've never gotten a clarification as to what I am required to put a fence of.
Now, did you ask the code enforcement officer if he's double tarped it, you
couldn't see outlines. Would that be satisfactory?
I was just told that what I have is unsatisfactory and I needed to change it. I could never get a clarification as to what I needed to do. I changed the material to a denser material.
And I take it from your surprise this afternoon when there's a complaint of the height of the fence. It's your testimony that the height of the fence was built at the recommendation of the code officer?
Yes, I was instructed to build it at 6 feet tall.
And you didn't build it on the outer perimeter of your property. You set it back at 7 feet in one location, it looks like, and 3 feet at another.
And then on the face of the property, it's set back, I believe, 20 feet from the property line.
And it's your testimony that it does not obstruct the view to that corner beyond 35 feet.
No, it does not. In fact, if you look the other direction, you can see not even a quarter of the distance.
After your March conversation with the code enforcement officer, did you have any other face-to-face conversation with him about your property?
No.
All right, nothing further.
Do you have any direct questions, Ms. Pam? I have a few. He said that, let's start that, from time to time, there's testimony that you have vehicles parked in front of the house, perhaps 3, you're indicating they all run.
Yes, they're all registered.
Okay, and as to the vehicles that are inside the fence, you're saying that they run also?
Yes.
And they're not registered, are they?
Oh, at the cost of registrations, I'm sorry, just this month alone, I paid almost $700 in registration fees. So yes, they are non-opt, but they are cars that I do use.
When was and how many are those you're indicating that are in the backyard? Or not in the backyard, in the fenced yard, I'm sorry.
9.
How often do you start those vehicles to keep them running?
I usually try and fire them up in the spring and get everything circulating through them, but I inspect them.
So they sit for quite a long time, isn't that correct?
Well, yeah, I've been saving money while my wife is attending school. I can't, save money and go to racing. I have 3 race cars there, and I had to give up my racing temporarily till my wife is done with her studies.
You've seen this exhibit 14, the aerial view?
Yes, that is an older photo that was taken. If you notice, there is no 5th wheel in there. That was because I was in Utah at the time while my wife was attending another pharmacy school. And I had actually packed the cars closely together like that in order to prevent theft.
And are you indicating that, for example, you don't consider that unsightly or blighted for neighbors?
The aerial view, Your Honor?
Well, when you're...
And that's a 2015 picture.
Yeah.
So
That's all
Yeah.
changed, though. That is all changed.
Okay, just one step at a time. This complaints did start in
16.
2016, and I assume 2016 it looked like this.
No, in 2016, it looks considerably different.
Okay, so
2016 is actually when I started. I had moved the vehicles around and started grading and putting in gravel. And I've already leveled a portion of that, but once my wife was accepted into another pharmacy school, I stopped procedures. I'm raising the area in the back so I can build a shop.
yes, I understand that, and you've been telling that to the code enforcement officer for quite some time, correct?
I'm sorry that my wife is having health issues.
Yes.
I
I'm not
can't- I
saying you
can't-
don't have
I can't move.
reasons. I'm asking you a question. You've been telling that to the officer for some time, correct?
Yes, for the
And
time that
you've
she's,
given him reasons why you can't do it, I suspect. Is that correct?
yes,
Right.
the times that I have talked to him. Most of the time, he does not contact me, other than by mail.
There have been photographs presented where there's vehicle axles, two or more in the backyard along with other property that appears to be quite jammed. Do you recall that?
Well, some of those photos I did not see, so, no. But I know what is back there. It is my yard. And I had to scramble to move everything out of a storage unit because they raised my rates from $60 a month to $180 a month. And so, yes, the stuff is on a trailer. My intentions are to repair the wall on that shelter and move everything inside of there.
This number 35 here?
Yes, looking over the top of my fence, yes.
Yes. And that was just as of a few months ago, is that correct?
Yes.
And it looks quite
Well, like I said, the stuff
compacted.
on top of the trailer will be put inside the building when the building is repaired.
You've been on this property for 22 years?
Yes, I have.
Right. And it's, at least in 2015, it looked like this.
Yes. That's already been established.
319 looked like this. These cars here. Is that correct?
If you go
That's a
over my
yes or
fence,
no?
yes.
Okay. You had any rat infestation?
No, I have not.
Okay.
A neighbor had a rat infestation that did come over on, but I laid out a bunch of traps and the neighborhood cats. And I didn't catch anything in any of my traps.
Do you know what the lot size of your property is?
60 by 120.
And it's basically, there's no free space back there, is there?
Well, I don't know what you consider free space.
It's.
I can walk
has
around
vehicles
everything.
and buildings and, let me say, there's no open space.
No, that isn't correct. There's areas back there that I work. In fact, I recently constructed a sidecar for a friend.
Did you, can't remember if you answered the question about the axle wheels, the axles.
Yes, I have 2 axles that I haven't finished pulling the braking system off, so I can send it to the scrap.
What other?
That happens to be the braking system that fits my car trailer, which you cannot buy. So when the opportunity came to get components for my car trailer, I got them.
All right.
I take things to Gabe on a regular basis, and those will be going.
So it's your intent that with these 9 vehicles that I suspect that you charge the battery and did some other things, they will run.
Yes.
But you don't take them out on the street and...
Well, of course not. They're not registered. I can't even roll them out onto the street.
I understand that. But you consider it's basically your inventory and you're going to keep those, is that correct?
Well, I actually have, I'm waiting for 2 people to show up to take 2 of the vehicles, but they haven't yet.
All right. All right. Any further questions? I have further questions.
The 2 vehicles that you're selling them as intact, complete
Yes.
running vehicles? And you said that they were non-op, so you've gone to DMV and actually did the non-op on these vehicles?
Yes.
And I heard you testify earlier about the GTO, and doesn't that in itself have some pretty significant value once you get it restored?
Yes, but that's my race car. I drag race.
Now, His Honor went back to the 2015 picture. The items that were in 2015 prior to any complaint, that those items are not still the south of the side of your property, are
No,
they?
they are not.
And the vehicles and I think I've asked this, but those vehicles now have been moved, they're driven over to the north side of your property.
Yes.
And it was your understanding that the basis of this complaint before the case was closed is that the number of the cars you had was a public nuisance because you could see them.
Yes.
And you were told that, hey, if you can't see it from the roadway, it's not a nuisance with the code officer.
Correct.
No, thank you.
Are you saying you had some confusion about the first issue of the fence and its requirements, and then separate issue of public nuisance regarding vehicle numbers?
I've never been told of an actual number, and the accusations of operating a junkyard is false.
Well, you received notices and issues of complaint of public nuisances, isn't that correct?
Yes, I did, but I addressed the issues that I could address.
Okay, I have no question.
I can't address the fabric or materials that I'm using to build a fence if I'm not able to talk to the person who wants it constructed out of who knows what.
All right, I think I have enough information, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this under submission, and I will enter an order appropriately and advise everyone. But if anyone wants to argue, I'll give you a couple minutes each. If you don't have to, I think I have a pretty good...
Just briefly, because I don't want to beat this dead horse to death more.
Your Honor, I was just going to offer briefing on the county code if it'd be helpful. I'm sure Mr. Reese would be happy to. I can put something together. The only argument I would give is that Mr. Smith said it pretty clearly himself. Random people of the public are knocking his door trying to buy parts. Whether they're complaining or trying to purchase things from him, the neighborhood understands he's got a junkyard.
And that can be quickly responded to because Mr. Smith is under the impression that the code officer was sending people there to make the case like we would do controlled buys, that if they are making the allegation, then let's get some evidence, and that fell on deaf ears. He's not running a junkyard. County code doesn't say the number of vehicles. It clearly says inoperable vehicles. These vehicles move from one point to the next, and he has the expense of going to DMV and putting non-ops on them. So they're not junk vehicles that are dilapidated, that are going nowhere. What's most telling for me of why there's no due process for the homeowner in a case like this, and the disadvantage they're at, is when they're told the case is closed He's told that the nuisance is A, B, or C. But if you take them out of public sight, which makes sense, if you can't see it or smell it, it wouldn't really make a public nuisance. So he's told if you take it out of public sight, then you're good. So he does, and he gets the letter case that the case is closed, that you've remedied the situation. But that remedy didn't fall under the guidelines of one of the neighbor's aesthetic opinions, so she made a complaint that she didn't like the fence. So now we have to undo the case closed because the fence isn't to one person's standard. And I empathize with Mr. Mello because it is a very, very subjective issue here. It seems like if you built the fence out of wood, we wouldn't be here.
Just one quick comment. I suspect you agree with me that an inoperable vehicle can still be moved under certain circumstances.
Well, I use the term operable as it runs. DMV, I think, uses inoperable, that you have no intent to register it and drive it on the street.
All right.
I restore vehicles all the time. When I get them, they're inoperable. When I'm done with them, they operate.
What's your position on briefing?
If the court wants a briefing,
I'm open. I can read the county code. There's nothing really case law, so.
the code is not much help because it's so ethereal. It doesn't give much of it doesn't lend itself to a lot of definitive points when it comes to the number of cars.
Did you want to brief?
Yeah, I'd like to brief. I think Mr. Reese is selling the county code a little short.
All right. If you could, within, so we can keep this kind of online, a week, or do you need two?
I can have it submitted by next Friday.
I would
Okay.
need some time after I receive his. I'm in a 2-week 288 case coming up rapidly, and a domestic violence the week
Okay.
after next.
If we could have it all done in 30 days by the next.
That should be fine. I can, once I see his moving papers, then I can just need about a week after I receive them.
All right. And as to, do you have my, did you want to put the briefings in the community development, and Mr. Mello can get them to me, or I can pick them up, or do you want to send them to my P.O. box?
I'll send it to Don.
I'll send them through Mr. Mello. I mean, I've used that process once before.
That would be, I think, easiest for everyone.
As long as he doesn't
Briefing, and when
object.
he comes in, you let me know.
Yes, we can do that.
All right, the exhibits will, entered into evidence will be kept with me. And, it's been till, it's continued till, August, let's see here. August, what's the next 30 days? 16, is it?
Your Honor, I'm gonna, if the court will indulge me on that, because I know that my trial, the last week of August is the end of the first week of that trial, and we're going into the first week of September. I don't want to set it to a date that I know that I'm double set.
Well, we only appear here,
Your Honor, if
Once a
you're willing to rule or take under submission, you can rule on after the briefing. Set this just for a status.
I'm in
2
agreement.
months away.
I'm in agreement with county counsel that if you're not taking any evidence or arguments, then take it under submission and put it on for status for the receipt of your written order.
You can issue the written order before and just have it on status as you normally do after an order anyway to monitor progress. And then if you choose to
we'll
order
put this
not.
on for September 20 at 2 p.m. for confirmation of order, and briefings should be completed by the end of August.
Thank you,
Okay?
Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, I think that last case will have to continue to.
Unless you need to urgently leave, do you think, I believe this last case will be brief. the 458 Olive,
Yeah, aren't we going to do a,
full hearing.
on that?
Yes, it's weather pendant. Once it rains, if it came to it, it would be difficult to abate it.
Probably gonna take about 15 minutes.
I have the time if you have the time.